Last night, as the sun set over Fishhook Lake outside of Park Rapids, where I am now, Winona LaDuke smoked tobacco and offered a blessing for the water. Earlier in the evening, she spoke to a multi-faith gathering. A crowd of 300 or so gathered clergy and lay leaders from near and far. The people had come and answered the call. They traveled from California and Alaska and Puerto Rico and St. Croix Falls and Chisago City and Minneapolis. I sat and later stood with Marty Harding, Gary Noreen, and Nanette Delmonico. We'll catch up with Wanda Brown later today. They may already be together. That crew has joined the larger contingent, thousands of people from all over the country who are in trainings and education events today to learn about Line 3 and the protest and action that we have been called here to do. Together, we joined the chant, "We are treaty people. We are treaty people. We are treaty people." We are here joining forces with these thousands of other activists who have been called together by Indigenous leaders, and particularly Indigenous women, the grandmothers, who have been fighting within the system for 7 years to stop Line 3. I'm going to play a video about Line 3. This explains more of it, I think, in scope than I can. And I'm very hopeful that this will, that we'll be able to see it well. So bear with me for just one moment while I pull this video up.
Because this company wants to send dirty tar sands through hundreds of our watersheds to the shore of Lake Superior, to the Great Lakes, the fifth of the world's fresh water. We don't want your tar sands oil. We don't want this way of life. We want something better. We want our children to have a future. This is going to harm wild rice irrevocably. This is going to kill a way of life for Anishinaabe people. This is going to violate their treaty rights. We have treaty rights.
This is our lands. And we've already lost 13 to 15 wild rice lakes, that sustains our food here. The fish habitat, the deer habitat, the birds, this is not good for our lands and the animals. No, we don't have to accept it. We need more bodies up here. We need more people who can be arrested to say no to these pipelines, to the damaging of the ecosystem. There's not going to be another habitable planet out in the universe. So this is what we got to take care of.
We're standing for so many more that are not here. We're standing for people around the world. That's what we're doing here. That's why we have to take a stand. That's why we have to be brave. We have to be bold. Stop line 3!
Stop line 3!
Stop line 3!
Stop line 3! Stop line 3! Stop line 3! Stop line 3! Stop line 3! Stop line 3! Stop line 3!
So, what does it mean that we are treaty people? As Ms. LeDuc said last night, this place up here, these North Woods, the North Woods of Minnesota and Wisconsin and all across this beautiful rural landscape, this place is full of life. It is the place of life. And it supports Native people and local and non-Native people. The habitat is rich. You know this. Line 3 is a breach of the Treaty of 1855. And that treaty, the 1855 treaty, gave the Ojibwe people ceded land while still holding the right to hunt, to fish, and to gather, and including gathering wild rice. According to Angelique Eaglewoman, a professor at the Mitchell Hamlin School of Law, the treaty rights protecting wild rice and the traditional uses by the Chippewa tribes are the law, and permitting a pipeline through these lands is a violation of that law. Well, we know it's not the first time treaty rights have been violated. I am not Ojibwe nor Chippewa nor enrolled in any other tribal nation. I don't claim indigenous status. How can I say that I am a treaty person? How can we say that we are all treaty people? Because I am a citizen of the United States, and that treaty was signed in my name and in yours. Our seventh principle of Unitarian Universalism and the proposed eighth principle help guide our theological understanding of what it means to be people of integrity. If a treaty is broken in our name, was signed in our name, and the promise is not kept, we are complicit in that lack of integrity. Here's what these two principles say, and I want to connect this to integrity and why this is important to us as Unitarian Universalists. The principles say we covenant to affirm and promote the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. Often when I think of that seventh principle, I think of it as the nature principle, right? The environmental principle, the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part. I am one with the water and the lark who announces the new day and the deer and the eagle. I am one with all of those. We are interconnected. I don't often connect that to my interconnection with all of the people, my interconnection with and interdependence on and with indigenous people and with oil company executives and with banks and with governments. But this sense of interconnection that calls us to integrity, how can my integrity influence my part of the web where I hitch onto that web? That's one way for me that principle calls that into action. Here's one small action that my husband and I took this year. We are fortunate, privileged enough to have a home and a mortgage. We have taken our mortgage vows many times, I would say. We decided to refinance our mortgage this year because we could get a lower interest rate. The interest rates worked in our favor. And when we did that, we let go of our Wells Fargo owned mortgage. We decided that when we refinanced, we refinanced through a credit union. It had been weighing on me that Wells Fargo, one of the companies that supports Line 3 and other oil pipelines and oil companies, was getting my interest money, was getting a payment from us every month. That weighed heavily on me. So we changed that. It took some effort. We did it. And the environmental crisis goes on. It's not going to solve it, but it was one small thing that we could do. The more of us that do that sort of thing, the better it will be. I mean, Wells Fargo doesn't care that my little mortgage changed, but if enough of us do, and we are public about it, the more it will make a difference. What can we do to uphold our integrity? I felt out of integrity by being in business with a company whose policies and support I didn't agree with. The proposed, the proposed 8th principle of Unitarian Universalism calls us toward spiritual wholeness by creating a diverse, multicultural, beloved community by our actions, which accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and in our institutions. I am called to look at all of my use of plastic, my use of fossil fuels, my support for a just transition. Doesn't mean that I can be exempt from using plastics and fossil fuels. I drove to get up here. Some people flew to get here. It's not that we're stopping this all at once. And we're looking for ways to be accountable and accountably dismantle racism, which shows up in this treaty. And spiritual wholeness calls us to integrity, to be people of integrity, to uphold the treaty, to demand that our government uphold the treaty that was signed in our name, is integrity, which is a part of spiritual wholeness. Do you see how I'm making this theological thread? I always think it's important for us as Unitarian Universalists, mostly very progressive people, it's helpful for me to tie that to the principles of Unitarian Universalism. This is my theological grounding. That's what I mean by we are all treaty people. We are accountable. And I benefit in a society that does not uphold this treaty. And so it is for me to see what can I do and to talk to other people and see what we can do together. What do we mean by a just transition? This was a new phrase for me from the executive director, Sam Grant of Minnesota 350. But he didn't coin the phrase. He was just the first person I heard use it. Just transition. According to the Climate Justice Alliance, a just transition is a principle, a process, and a practice. It's a unifying and place-based, so not the same everywhere, set of principles, processes, and practices that build economic and political power to shift from an extractive economy, we're extracting it from the ground, extractive economy, to a regenerative economy, regenerating energy, wind, solar, etc. This means approaching production and consumption cycles holistically and waste-free. The transition itself must be just and equitable, redressing past harms and creating new relationships of power for the future through reparations. Who needs to be at the table? What is just for people being at the table? If the process of transition is not just, the outcome never will be. Just transition describes both where we are going and how we get there. One of the ways that I think about this is one of the arguments for Line 3 is that we'll create thousands of new jobs, right? Lots of great, high-paying new jobs. That has turned out for Minnesotans, right? For people in this area. That has turned out not to be true. Lots of folks who have come to work on the pipeline have come from other states. These are workers who follow the pipeline along. And if the outcome is not just, the whole process is not just. Yes, people need good paying jobs. And we know that renewable energy can provide lots of excellent, good paying jobs. Solar farms that are being put in lots of places are providing lots of good paying jobs. It does not have to be the extractive economy that leaves pollution in its wake and provides short-term jobs and an unjust gain and harms so much wildlife along the way. This movement for a just transition grew out of labor unions and environmental justice groups that were led by low-income communities of color. They saw a need to phase out industries that were harming workers and community health and the planet, and at the same time provide a just pathway for workers to transition to other jobs. So the paradigm shift is led by the workers and not by industry. So let's talk about this industry. Enbridge is a Alberta, Canada-based multinational corporation that extracts tar sands oil. I am no geophysicist or hydrologist, but what I know about tar sands oil is that it takes an extraordinary amount of effort and pollution and water to extract this heavy bitumen. It's molasses-like bitumen oil that is in the sand. It's open pit mining. Look up pictures of tar sands oil fields to see what it's done to the landscape in Alberta, Canada. And the pipeline, Line 3, comes from Alberta. It crosses many, many bodies of water, including the Mississippi at least twice, the Shell River 6 times, and I think 64 bodies of water in total as it makes its way down to Superior, Wisconsin, where it will be shipped across the Great Lakes and go to refineries in Ohio and other places. It's heavier, it's more expensive, and it's vastly more environmentally damaging all the way from production to refinery than other kinds of petroleum products like things that would come from oil rigs. I'm not lifting up oil rigs as great environmental standards, but this is particularly bad. Sometimes it feels so heavy. The lift that we are required to make feels so heavy. What can we possibly do? It's how can we go up against a multinational company that has got a huge lobby behind it, and our politicians, our people who could stop it, don't stop it. What can we do? Well, we can feel, for one thing, that we're not alone. I want to share this great reading that I've probably shared with you before. This is Marge Piercy, her poem called The Low Road. What can they do to you? Whatever they want. They can set you up, they can bust you, they can break your fingers, they can burn your brain with electricity, blur you with drugs till you can't walk, can't remember. They can take your child, wall up your lover. They can do anything you can't stop them from doing. How can you stop them? Alone? You can fight, you can refuse, you can take what revenge you can, but they roll over you. But two people fighting back to back can cut through a mob. A snake dancing file can break a cordon. An army can meet an army. Two people together can keep each other sane, give support, conviction, love, massage, hope, sex. Three people are a delegation, a committee, a wedge. With four, you can play bridge and start your own organization. With six, you can rent a whole house, eat pie for dinner with no seconds, and hold a fundraising party. A dozen make a demonstration, 100 fill a hall, 1,000 have solidarity in your own newsletter, 10,000 power and your own paper, 100,000 your own media, 10 million your own country. It goes on one at a time. It starts when you care to act. It starts when you do it again and they said no. It starts when you do it again after they said no. It starts when you say we and know who you mean, and each day you mean one more. The Indigenous leaders, the Indigenous women, called us here to be a part of the we of the treaty people. There are Unitarian Universalists from all over the country, members of the UU Ministry for the Earth. Thank God I do not have to figure out on my own how to stop this. Why is this moment in particular important? There's a lot of climate news in the news right now, and a lot of climate groups that are pushing President Biden to act in a certain way, to put climate priorities in his recovery budget, in his Recovery Act. This moment for Line 3 is particularly important because President Biden has an opportunity to issue an executive order to halt work on this line. Enbridge is working as fast as they can. They say it's 50% complete, but Ms. LeDuc doesn't say that so. She says a lot of that pipe is over the ground. It's not in the ground. And of course, they're trying to work as quickly as they can so they can get enough of it finished that even if the executive order comes, they can continue work. So it's so important that we let President Biden know, and all of our elected officials know, even the ones who don't agree with you, let them know that we want a just transition, that we want a stop to Line 3, that we want a future for all of us, that we want to uphold the treaty that was signed in our name. I'll invite you again to watch future newsletter articles in the one that's coming out this week. Jean, I think it comes out on Wednesday, and I'll be putting some links and ways that you can make your voice heard and organizations that you can join. And I know that many of you are already deeply involved in this work. I don't mean to suggest that you're not already started and deeply involved and committed to this work. I am so grateful to be a part of a congregation that shows up and makes its voice heard. And this is a call for us to continue doing that and to reach out to our beloveds and help them be involved in this just transition also. I'm going to share another song from Sarah Thompson, and then we'll begin to wrap up.
We don't want your sulfide mind. 20 years here, then you leave it behind. We don't want your acid brine seeping in the river's noxious wine. Short-term jobs job creation, long-term devastation. Don't want your pollution, crime. We don't want your mind. 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 We don't want your company wish, pretty plants served on a copper dish. What do we have when you finish? Messed up rice and poisoned fish. Pocket profit and you're gone first class. We get a toxic drinking glass. Bottom line's a dollar sign. We don't want your mind. 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 Rain falls on the ground, groundwater flowing down. Simple lesson, science fair. Water goes back in the air. Put in the water what you made. You breathe it in some other day. Drinking a well, wish and dream. Precious water, precious water, living stream. We don't want your careless plan creeping in this forest land. Clean water we demand. We don't want your helping hand, your economic contribution. Don't want your noise pollution in our ancient pine. We don't want your mind. 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 Rain falls on the ground, groundwater flowing down. Simple lesson, science fair. Water goes back in the air. Put in the water what you made. Breathe it in some other day. Drinking a well, wish and dream. Precious water, precious water, living stream. We don't want your sulfide mind. 20 years here, then you leave it behind. We don't want your acid brine, sleeping in the river's noxious wine. Short-term job creation, long-term devastation. Don't want your pollution, crime. We don't want your mind. 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 Precious water, precious water, living stream. Precious water, precious water, living stream.
Oh, yeah. As you could tell, that was about the copper sulfide mine, but it's all related and it's all about big business, right? Oh, beloveds, so beautiful to be with you today. I can't think of a way that I would more want to spend this time than connected to this community. I was so glad that it worked out for me to be up here.